Hey guys, and welcome to another huge episode of Triggered. I hope everyone's doing well, and I hope that your week is off to a good start. And the theme today, guys, is pretty simple: results versus excuses, concrete wins versus bureaucratic noise, a president who uses leverage versus a political class that uses process as a hiding place. Because look at the contrast right now. Your favorite president goes to China, and suddenly, magically, China is talking about buying American farm products, American planes, American energy, and opening up the markets again. Democrats look at that and, you know, their first instinct is to find the asterisk. Oh, what can we do to put in, what clause can we throw in there? It's insane. One side is trying to make the government work for Americans again. The other side is trying to make sure the government still works for them because it's all they got. It's all they would be capable of. So we're going to get into all of that today. So guys, make sure you're liking, make sure you're sharing, make sure you're subscribing so you never miss one of these major episodes. If you missed the show here on Rumble, go over to Apple, Spotify, catch it there. Remember, like, share, subscribe. Just hit the button. It's so easy. You guys are part of it. Get it out there. At the end of the show, share it with your friends. For all of the top headlines that we cover here on the show, go over, check out my news app, MXM News, like minute by minute, MXM, where you can get the mainstream news without the mainstream bias. And of course, guys, don't forget about our brave sponsors for having the guts to support this program. That's not easy. It does take legitimate guts. Some may say balls. I think I can say that on Rumble. And it matters. So, support those who share your values. Check out those sponsors.
And guys, we have another familiar face sponsoring the show now, Goldco. Gold just surged past $5,000 an ounce. Silver blew past 100. And the U.S. just added silver to the critical mineral list, meaning it's now considered crucial for American security and economic survival. This isn't speculation. This is real. That's why I've renewed my partnership with the #1 rated gold company, Goldco. A+ rated by the BBB, the Better Business Bureau, and they've helped Americans place over $3 billion in gold and silver. So visit donjrgold.com, DONJR gold.com, to get a free 2026 gold and silver kit. And because you're part of this audience, you get up to 10% back in bonus silver or gold just for getting started. Again, that's donjrgold.com. Do it now. Educate yourself. What do you have to lose?
Now, let's get into all of the details. And I want to start with China because the media has still not figured out how to cover it. When America uses power and actually gets something back, they don't know what to do. They're just lost. They're like a deer in the headlights. These are things that we should be doing. We should have been doing for decades, but we haven't. For years, Washington told you China was too complicated. It's too delicate, guys. It's too important, too interconnected, too whatever, to do anything, which was always just a fancy way of saying, we are going to let China win. We are going to call it diplomacy. And if you complain about it, we will call you unsophisticated. You guys couldn't possibly understand. The morons that got us into these messes for decades, oh, you wouldn't understand now. We understand pretty damn well. It's the elites that were the ones that didn't understand. They never did, probably never will, or they were just benefiting from it and they're okay with that, destroying our middle class in the process. But this week, my father went to Beijing and came back with commitments that actually matter to people in this country. China approved an initial purchase of 200 American-made Boeing aircraft. China agreed to buy at least $17 billion per year in United States agricultural products. China restored market access for U.S. beef facilities. That's a big one. And the two countries are now talking about rare earths, critical minerals, energy, North Korea, and the big one, reopening the Strait of Hormuz. This is not a think tank white paper, folks. That is leverage. That is power. That is strength. That is resolve. That is everything we've been lacking forever. Check this out.
He made a statement. It might not have been from him. It was somebody, but they talked about the decline. But he said today, and he said it very publicly, he said the U.S. was declining for the last 4 years. And he said what President Trump has done in the last 15, 16 months has been virtually a miracle. He said we have the hottest country anywhere in the world. But he said that it was a declining country. Under Joe Biden, he said we had a seriously declining country, which we did, with people pouring in from all over the world, from prisons and everything else. He said what President Trump has done has been a virtual miracle. It's the hottest country anywhere in the world, and it is, yeah.
Not another speech about managing decline. Not another lecture from some globalist who thinks a trade deficit is just a number on a spreadsheet. Real commitments, real purchases, real jobs. And this is what drives the regime media crazy, because they spent years pretending Trump's approach to China was reckless. It was reckless, dangerous, it was unserious. Meanwhile, they got nothing from China for decades, other than maybe the theft of all of our IP. Trump walks in and says, buy American products, buy American planes, reopen the channel that matters, and stop pretending the United States is just another country waiting in line, because it's not. That's not reckless, guys. That's how a serious country acts, with serious leadership. And by the way, this is not just about farms and airplanes. It's also about energy. Check this out.
President Xi and I talked a lot about Taiwan. He thinks they cannot have anything to do with what they're doing. I mean, he's against very much what they're doing. We talked about Taiwan. We talked about Iran a lot. And I think we have a very good understanding with both. On Taiwan, he does not want to see a fight for independence, because that would be a very strong confrontation. And I heard him out.
Are you going to change your wording?
No, I didn't make a comment on it. I heard him out. I have a lot of respect for him. On Iran, it's very interesting. He feels strongly they can't have a nuclear weapon. He said that very strongly. They cannot have a nuclear weapon, and he wants them to open up the strait. But as he said, they closed it, and then you closed them, with a smile. And it's true. We control the strait. And they've done no business, literally they've done no business in the last 2.5 weeks, which is approximately $500 million a day. So we're doing very well on all fronts.
First, check out all the latest predictions on Polymarket. So if you follow politics, everyone's got an opinion. But on Polymarket, you actually get real odds on what's likely to happen. Polymarket is a prediction market where people trade on real events, elections, debates, policy moves, and it doesn't stop at politics. There are markets on the economies, tech, sports, pop culture, and so much more. It's all live, it's transparent, and it gives you a real-time indicator of what people really think is going to happen. So go give it a look at polymarket.com, check it out, and let me know what you think.
Now listen, we're not pretending the job is finished, probably nowhere close, but it's been sitting at the starting line for generations. The strait still has to reopen to normal commercial traffic. Iran still has to be dealt with. And the so-called allies who love NATO meetings and photo ops need to decide whether they're actually going to help when it matters, because thus far, they haven't. But this is the difference between talking about leverage and actually having leverage. China needs energy. America produces energy. The world needs stability. America can actually provide that. And when Trump is at the table, everyone understands that the United States is not there to apologize for its very existence. We're there to actually get results. We're there to get things done. That's the same mindset that's now showing up at the border and in the sanctuary city fight. Tom Homan gave a great interview to the Daily Signal, and he laid out exactly what's happening. Democrats in places like New York want to limit cooperation with ICE. They want to make it harder for ICE to work in jails, to deport literally criminals. They want to attack agents for wearing masks, even as threats against ICE officers are exploding. And Homan's answer was basically, fine. If you'll not let us arrest the criminal illegal alien safely in the jail, then we will send more agents into the community and arrest them there. Check it out.
They hate Trump more than they care about their communities. They don't want President Trump to get a win. Second reason is we're spoiling their long-term plan. They got a long-term strategy here. Open the border up, release millions of people into the United States to go to sanctuary cities. But remember, when Biden opened the border, he also overturned the Trump census rule, which illegal aliens be counted next census. So they think, send millions of sanctuary cities. The next census is done. It's going to result in more seats in the House for the Democrats. They sold this country's national security out for future political benefit.
This, guys, is so obvious that only Democrats could pretend not to understand it. You have two options. You let ICE pick up the criminal in jail, where it's safer for the officer, it's safer for the community, and frankly, it's safer for everyone involved, including the criminal. Or you release that person into the streets, into the wild, and then ICE has to send teams to hunt them down and find them. And if he is with other people who are also here illegally, guess what happens? They're getting arrested too. That is not complicated. That is the law. That is law enforcement. But Democrats don't want law enforcement. They want theater. They want theatrics. They want performances on television and sound bites that don't mean anything, but make them look good. They want to say that they're protecting immigrants while creating policies that make immigrant communities less safe. They want to say that they're helping victims while shielding the very criminals who create more victims. Homan said it perfectly. Sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for criminals. Hard stop. That's it. And he's right. And now, let me take that same idea overseas, because this Alex Saab story is actually incredible. Alex Saab was one of Nicolas Maduro's main bagmen. He was extradited to the United States years ago. He was accused in a massive corruption and money laundering case, and is a massive food air shipping scandal, basically, where he had contracts for billions of dollars but didn't deliver any of the goods. And then Biden let him walk in 2023. Biden literally pardoned the guy in a prisoner deal and sent a message to every corrupt actor in the entire hemisphere that if you're useful enough, connected enough, or politically valuable enough, maybe America will just cut a deal and actually move on. But now, Saab has been deported back to the United States after being detained in Venezuela. And this, guys, is the part I want you to focus on. Reports say that the arrest and deportation suggested a new level of collaboration between the United States and Venezuelan law enforcement under acting President Delcy Rodriguez. In plain English, Venezuelan authorities are cooperating. They're working with America. And they're sending us a criminal that Biden let go. And since Saab only had a limited pardon, he can be prosecuted under numerous separate charges. That is a pretty clean contrast to what we've seen for a long time. Biden pardons the bagman. Trump's America gets him back. And by the way, Saab was not some random paperwork case. This guy made a fortune off of a rotten system that crushed poor Venezuelans, stole from the country, and helped the Maduro machine stay alive, selling expired food and cardboard boxes to poor people, making millions while Venezuelans suffered, and then hiding behind the regime, protected by an American regime. And now he's under U.S. control again. That matters for Venezuela, guys. It matters for corruption. It matters for the message to every cartel link, regime connected, sanctions dodging operator in the entire region. The message is the old deal is over. You do not get to hide behind Biden's weakness forever. You did not get to assume The United States is just, too distracted, too embarrassed, too politically correct, or too captured by the process itself to come and get you.
To the Bainbridge, welcome home. Congratulations from both my wife Jenny and I, standing here on this ship in Norfolk, welcoming you back to America. The extraordinary sailors and crew of Strike Group 12, for nearly a year, you have held the line for our nation. There's something especially American about a day like this, extraordinarily American about this, about families and communities that put it all on the line and send their best, their men and women, across the globe to defend this freedom we find that is so precious. And so today, from the Secretary of Navy and the Chief of Naval Operations, the President of the United States takes pleasure in presenting the Presidential Unit Citation to the U.S. Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group for outstanding performance in action against enemy forces. You haven't just met the standard of excellence, you have redefined it for the next generation of American warfighters. So God bless you, and may God bless the War Department and the United States of America. Welcome home.
And when you put all of this together, the pattern is obvious of what the rule of law versus corruption actually looks like. And speaking of patterns being obvious, let's talk more about ActBlue. The big Democrat fundraising apparatus, the crazy thing that went on for far too long that allowed them to raise more money than you could have ever possibly imagined. Because the same people who spent years screaming about foreign interference are now watching their own fundraising machine get dragged into the daylight. The New York Times, shockingly, but the New York Times actually reported that ActBlue's CEO has agreed to testify before Congress next month about foreign donor vetting. Because, guys, I know that this is controversial, but you should not be able to donate money into American politics with a gift card and a fake name, okay? That's not what the system's supposed to do. You should not be able to use someone else's identity to pump money into various campaigns. Foreign nationals should not be funding election machinery in the United States of America. Again, this is not complicated, guys. This is not rocket science. But watch how Democrats react. Because they spent years acting like, Russian interference, Russia was the greatest threat to democracy in human history. Never before have we seen anything like it. But when there's a common sense idea to make sure that foreign money is not flowing into American elections through online donation platforms, that we actually uphold the law as it relates to elections, the law, not our ideas, the actual law, suddenly the left says we need to have more nuance. So they always need nuance when they get caught, right? They never want to give anyone else nuance, or they never want to pretend there is nuance. If it's Republicans, suddenly, guys, they need more process. Suddenly, they need to protect the platform. Suddenly, transparency is dangerous, guys. We can't have too much transparency now. Only when they're caught. And remember, ActBlue's own lawyers warned that there was a million red flags with how they were operating. Their own lawyers said that. And now, ActBlue denies breaking the law. Well, if that's the case, then answer the questions. Show the records. Support the reforms. If this is all innocent, then matching donor names to payment cards should not be controversial. They should just do it. Unless the whole point is that the system works better for Democrats when nobody looks too closely and when nobody faces any actual consequence. But ActBlue is just one example of the fraud that is the foundation of the entire Democrat apparatus, the entire Democrat machine. Here's J.D. Vance laying out the scope of rooting out the fraud and making sure it stopped dead in its tracks.
No shame that when your government gives out, let's say, $7 billion to California for food stamp benefits, it doesn't know a single recipient of those food stamps. Not a one, because it's block granted to the states, and then we trust the states that they're going to police fraud themselves. We have not gotten any help from Gavin Newsom or a number of other blue states when we're trying to police to make sure that dead people don't get SNAP benefits, to make sure that these food benefits go to low-income kids. That's what they're there for, not to fraudsters. We'd love to have that cooperation, but so far, not yet.
And final question, has Tim Walz contacted you?
No, Tim.
And by the way, while we're talking about consequences, let's talk about a story the regime media absolutely hates because it cuts right through the fake narrative they spent years trying to build. Tina Peters, the former Mesa County clerk in Colorado, was serving a 9-year sentence, 9 years, connected to the voting system breach case from 2020. She was convicted in 2024. But Colorado Governor Jared Polis, a Democrat, just granted clemency as part of a group of commutations and pardons, and Peters is set for parole effective June 1st.
The only nonviolent offender that is on the commutation list. She was sentenced to almost 9 years in prison. And to be clear, she deserved to go to jail. She committed a crime. What's at issue here is how long the sentence is. And I agree with the appeals court that in the sentencing hearing, the judge incorrectly looked at and considered her bizarre viewpoints, her speech, and held her speech against her. She happens to be somebody that's espoused what I believe to be, what anybody objectively would believe to be incorrect opinions, conspiracies, etc. That is not a crime in our country. What is a crime is, along with 2 other co-conspirators, one got 6 months, one got parole only, accessed after a municipal election, election computers to download software for an independent audit prior to the software being updated. That is the crime. There were 4 felonies. Those felonies will stick with her. She's a convicted felon. And I believe that the 4.5 years that I'm commuting her sentence to, she'll be on parole along with a number of the other 9 next month, is a fair, just, and tough sentence for her crime.
What Polis acknowledged is that the punishment was based on her First Amendment right to free speech, and that he agreed with the Colorado Appeals Court reasoning that, the sentencing judge punished her too heavily based on that protected speech. Of course, if she was a liberal doing the same thing, she would have never faced any kind of consequence or anything. She would have just been let go. It would have never been a case. They would have never charged her. Nothing would have ever happened. But because she was a conservative, Colorado, it's just going to happen. Now just sit with that for a second, guys. A Democrat governor in Colorado looked at this case and said, basically, this sentence went too far. That's the whole point. That's the whole point, guys. The left spent years demanding that anyone who questioned the 2020 election be treated like some kind of domestic enemy, a domestic terrorist, actually. Not argued with, not debated, not, answered with transparency, destroyed, bankrupted, imprisoned, made into an example. Ask me how I know, because they tried to do it to us. And then they act shocked when normal Americans look at the system, they look at the details and say, wait a minute, is this justice or is this just punishment for having the wrong point of view? And that's the lawfare problem in one story. Obviously, this has happened thousands of times. I mean, just look to J6. It's gone on and on, whether it's businesses, individuals, anything. One side was targeted by the machine. They don't just want penalties. They want trophies. They want scalps. They don't just want accountability. They want humiliation. They don't just want the legal system to punish conduct. They want it to punish dissent from their views and opinions. And when the machine overreaches that badly, eventually, even some of its own people have to admit it. So guys, I hope you, again, have a great week. I hope you had a great weekend. I know I did. It was a crazy one. I had my daughter's high school graduation, which makes me feel really old. But Kai graduated high school on Friday. Amazing ceremony. I'm just super proud of her. Starts college next year. I can't believe I'm even admitting that. I don't feel that old. I feel just as like I did when she was born, maybe better. But I hope you guys all had an awesome weekend. And I know we're in that graduation season. So for all of you with high school, college, elementary school, kindergarten graduates, congratulations. Enjoy it. I hope we have an awesome send-off and to the year, at least the spring and an awesome start to the summer next weekend. But that's the show for today, guys. Thanks as always for tuning in. Make sure that you're liking, sharing, subscribing. Okay, hit the little like button right now. As soon as I get done, okay, share this with your friends. Okay, subscribe so you never miss one of these episodes. But get it out there. Okay, you guys are the front line of defense for this stuff. It's not going to get out there on its own. The mainstream media is still always going to do its thing. We need to be part of the process. So like, share, subscribe, okay? Check out our incredible sponsors down below and in the video description, okay? That's a big deal. These guys have guts to support this kind of programming.
Invest in the next generation with Y Refi and be a part of the solution for millions of Americans. With Y Refi, you're helping borrowers while investing in the future. Y Refi offers accredited investors fixed rate returns backed by private student loans. Choose a term from 1 to 5 years. Take your monthly interest as income or reinvest it. Totally your choice. To learn more, preview the private placement memo for complete details and call 877-80-INVEST. That's 877-80-INVEST. Now,
support those who share your values, okay? But get it out there. Remember, check us out on iTunes if you missed the podcast here, or if your friends get their podcast through iTunes or Spotify. As soon as we're done here, we'll download it up on the show over there so everyone can get the word out. So there's no excuses to not share it, okay? So get it out there. Work with us here on this. And always remember, guys, stay strong, stay informed, stay engaged, and always stay just a little bit triggered. Thanks a lot, guys. I'll talk to you all again on Thursday.